Let's deal, well, I want to talk about the migrant crisis and a particularly egregious example of someone we weren't able to deport, and also other matters in the excellent company of Reform UK Deputy Leader Richard Tice. Welcome, Richard. Thanks for joining me.
Good evening, Kevin.
Well, first of all, can I just ask you something before we get on to the business of the day? I had your excellent chairman, Zia Youssef, on my show on Friday night. And he's a good politician, old Zia. He danced around the issue a bit. But after Rupert Lowe, and I think you expressed similar sentiments as well, said that perhaps in the cases like Axel Rudakabana, the state should have the option of the death penalty. Rupert Lowe said that he thought that, and I tend to agree with him. And I think you indicated that you might have some sympathy with that. I mean, will at least the debate on the return of the death penalty become part of official Reform UK policy?
Well, actually, to be honest, Kevin, I've always said that this is one of those issues of personal conscience, a bit like assisted dying, a bit like abortion reform, where actually parties should say, you know, sometimes these things, you're never going to come together, and nor should you. And so I've always said, look, it's a matter of personal conscience. And I think there is a real clamour, though, I'm sensing from people to say, well, is this the time for a national debate about, and then referendum, about whether or not the death penalty in certain of the most egregious, horrific scenarios, such as child murderers, should be considered. And but you know, I've never expressed a view for the death penalty. Instinctively, I'm always nervous of the risk of mistakes, and you know that's been a thing. But equally, you get scenarios like we've just seen with this monster where you say, well, there's no mistake. And it's just, it's probably the most appalling thing any of us can recall. So, but it's not a party policy issue, frankly. I think, unless I've missed something, I think what Rupert said is we should have a national debate about it.
Yeah, that's what I meant, yeah.
And that's very different to saying, this is my specific view, or this should be the party view.
Yeah, I want to move. Yeah, absolutely. I want to move on
about that.
I want to move on in just a second. But my personal view is, first of all, I've always been a bit concerned. It's that it has been said for many a long years, if we had a referendum of the British people about the death penalty, they would vote fairly substantially for a return of executions if necessary. So I don't like the idea of the great and the good, the Westminster bubble gang, sort of believing it or somehow concluding it's their job to keep the people away from their baser instincts. So I do believe we need a proper debate about this, and I don't think most British people are sort of saying, right, let's string them up every time somebody comes along who's done something bad. I don't think it would be a bad thing if the state had it in its armoury in exceptional circumstances to be able to take a life for a life. That's my view anyway. But thanks for coming clean on all of that, Richard. Let's talk about the migrant crisis. And we've had another one of these egregious examples of the European Court of Human Rights getting involved and allowing someone to stay who should not be here. This is a 48-year-old Jamaican who has been jailed numerous times. He's violent, he's a drug dealer, he has been convicted of dealing crack and heroin, and was once convicted of attacking his partner in front of his kids. He's known as GH. For some reason, our courts have granted him anonymity. I'd like to know why, but we have. And it has been decided by an eminent judge that because one of his daughters might be trans, that he can stay because his daughter is experiencing gender identity issues and has only so far been able to discuss that or them with her father. So a judge has said, well, in that case, this guy who's a drug dealer, a violent attacker of his partner, deals heroin and crack, can stay in the country, courtesy of the ECHR. This madness has got to stop, hasn't it?
Oh, completely. And you have to ask yourself, who are these judges? What sort of decisions are they making? Why are they judges if they are so incompetent, so utterly out of step with basic common sense? This is a convicted foreign criminal who should have been deported at the first time, let alone however many times he's been in jail. And the idea that judges think it's appropriate to rely on the rulings of another foreign court, and then this sort of transgender child who says, oh, the lawyer says on behalf of the father, who says that the child apparently can only discuss this with the father. I'm smelling a lot of BS here. I'm smelling a clever legal firm finding a tiny little narrow chink from which they can ply their revolting trade of allowing violent, criminal, foreign offenders to stay on these shores. And I have to say, I'm raging about this one. I think tens of millions of British people will be raging about this one. You sort of wonder, I mean, these judges, frankly, if this is the rulings they're going to pass, they are not fit for purpose.
Yeah, that's our big problem. It's these judges who are making these decisions. Towards the end of last year, I specifically covered, I know talkTV, other presenters did as well, 2 cases of convicted paedophiles who happen to have families, but both of them have been in jail, done a couple of years in jail. They came out and both of them were, these are convicted child abusers, child sexual abusers. They were both allowed to stay by the European Court of Human Rights because of their right to a family life. In other words, to deport them to their home countries would be unfair to their children.
It's incredibly simple. You look, right, with rights comes responsibilities. And if you are a convicted criminal the first time, then you're in breach of those responsibilities, and therefore you have forfeited those relevant rights. It's incredibly straightforward, and we should have the courage and the guts to run our country and govern this country on that basis. And, you know, the idea that he was concerned about his children becoming withdrawn, well, of course the children have become withdrawn because their father was beating up his partner or wife in front of them. You know, tragically, domestic abuse is a serious thing which happens way too often, and you know this won't be the only isolated case. But I'm sorry. Well, actually, I'm not sorry. It's very simple. If you are a convicted foreign criminal, then be gone with you. It's as simple as that. After the first occasion, I'm actually all for. Once you've been convicted, why on earth should we pay for you to stay in our jails? Actually, you're on the first place home, and you can stay in the jail of where you come from.
Exactly. Now, on the same tack, 4 asylum seekers accused of faking their Afghan nationalities to get into the UK, while they wait for their trial for this crime, so they faked, well, they stand accused of faking their nationalities. They were, in fact, Sikhs, but they said that they were Afghans in order to get into the country in Christmas 2023. Now, in order to fight this case, they've been allowed to stay. They're currently now living in a Buckshee £575,000 luxury house in the exclusive home counties town of Hemel Hempstead. And because we've allowed them to stay and fight their case, it is likely to cost us at least £164,000 just to maintain their residency. What's going on here? What is going on?
It's the same gutless, hopeless, weak leadership, feeble civil servants that clearly don't like this country, that despise the traditional values of competence and decency and deterrence that we grew up with. And it's just utterly, it's so mad, it's so inexplicable. You think it's like a joke out of some sort of smelly, revolting cracker. Yeah. I mean, it's just, it's utterly incompetent. So are you saying that, it sounds from what you're saying that not only are they enjoying hospitality by way of accommodation at the taxpayer's expense, but we're paying their legal fees. I mean, on what planet would any sensible nation run themselves like that?
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a problem and you've come to someone else's country and you've got a problem, you pay the lawyers, pal. Yeah. You pay the translators. It's very simple. Don't expect the British taxpayer to pay it. We're done with it.
Yeah. These people are Indian citizens. You know, they lied. They said they were from Afghanistan in order to be allowed to stay. They then got found out. I mean, I don't see why we have to go through this long, drawn-out legal case that cost the taxpayer hundreds of thousands of pounds, both for their legal aid and their residency. Why don't we just send them back?
Well, you can have a legal case, but why does it need to take so long? It sounds fairly open and shut, seems to me. And we've got to be able to have prompt, rapid justice. Funny how when Keir Starmer determined that we would have rapid justice and people would get long sentences, when he didn't seem to mind interfering with the rights to a free and fair trial then, we note, then you can have prompt courts and prompt judgments and long sentences. But for everybody else, it seems to take months or years. Yeah, either we've got a consistent CPS and court process, or we haven't. And it sounds to me like we've got a two-tier court process, two-tier justice, two-tier policing from two-tier care.
It's just ridiculous. So basically, this family, there are 4 of them, have been in Britain illegally for 13 months. And their trial is now set for February 26. So that's more than a year hence. So far, their accommodation bill has cost taxpayers £328,000. That will be the cost by next year. They're living in as I say, a £500,000 house in Hemel Hempstead. And looks like their legal bills for the next year will come to £164,000.
It's incredibly simple.
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
It's incredibly simple. You'll have seen that we're now equal first in some polls. We're topping other polls. When we're running this country, in a few years' time, after the next general election, this will all change. And this is the sort of thing where actually you should have fast-track deportation courts. And it sounds like these folk would be prime candidates to enjoy that rapid route through justice onto an aeroplane and back to where they came from, which I think you said was India.
Yes, exactly. And in other words, Donald Trump style.